screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
That should be good.
Is that better?
Oh yeah, there we go. That's perfect.
Okay,
All right, so you're good.
yes.
Good.
How was your week?
Very good. Master cleansing is master cleansing. It's
Are you through with it?
today is my first lead out day, so I'm on orange juice, and tonight I get an avocado and a tomato, and I'm very excited about that.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I got your package as well. So, and I haven't really been able to look through any of it yet, but it all came through perfectly. Handful of laminated slides in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all ready.
So
to
that's
rock.
the book is all the locations, like all within, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles from where David's place is. So when
Oh,
you
that.
look at the book and look through that, just keep that in mind. Like that's the location. I don't remember what else I sent you, but I sent you a lot of stuff about it. I figured you could go through it like, a little bit at a time
Yeah.
as we move closer.
Yeah. And is this stuff that you're going to want to me to send back or bring back to the meetup?
If you, yeah,
Or maybe
no,
the slides at least? Because I'm like, I'll write on books if I am going to keep them.
yeah, right on the book.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll dig into those soon. I just, as much time as you have on the master cleanse, not preparing food, and like, I just have all these projects going on. So I'm like writing a book, I'm recording my other book, I'm setting up the meetup, I'm like, setting up my Subscribe Star and all of these things, all these projects, as well as doing like the shows every week. So, yeah, I've been busy.
That sounds fantastic.
It is all very good.
I've been almost in the I've almost been in the opposite space. Like, there are all these different projects which I could be working on, and I don't know. I'm just not feeling anything.
Not into them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really certain what it is, which is there's something inside. I'm very much like an inspiration sort of doer. So if I'm not inspired, I can't fake it, for better or for worse.
Totally.
And
This is why my first book came out in a year, and this next one has been in the works for the 5 years since then. Like, I love it. It's inspiring, but it just comes in bursts, and then there'll be like months and months where I'm just like, I'm not feeling it right now. I can't do it.
yeah, I've been feeling that. I've been feeling that a lot, and particularly, like almost like the I'm not getting the feedback loop that I'm receiving for the amount of energy which I put into a lot of things is it's not proportional.
Okay, so this if I can cut you off, I have this synchro that is like happening to me last night that I'm sort of unwrapping, and it connects with that, which is this, because I feel the same in a lot of ways that I like put all of this out, and there's sometimes where I get like the feedback back, and I'm like, okay, people like value this, and this is good, or I value this, or this is flowing, and so it's good, and whatever. And there's other times where it's like really, really not, and it seems like it's like almost like cut off from all sources of feedback almost. And I last night had this realization that like some of that is by design and intention from however you want to think of that, like the electronic world, or like, for example, a lot of the methods I use to reach out to people are electronic, and a lot of those are artificially like tamped down, and restricted, and it's like they're not showing it to certain people, or like people might even be responding and it won't show me that. And sometimes I find out that people have commented on something, or from like a month back, and I never saw it. It's like I'd go look for it even, and it wouldn't be there. And so there's things that like maybe even in real time we're being sort of manipulated out of feeling like there's an impact. And I don't think that it's even just electronic. It's just easy to point to the electronic side and see like the example there.
Right.
So I don't know, just when you said that, that came up because just last night I was having this kind of epiphany of like we can't even rely on feedback almost from any source, electronic, not electronic, like present or not present, as a indication of the value of something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know how much that connects to where you were
No,
going, but
totally. I
okay.
mean, I can appreciate that. And I just feel like lately, like it's almost, I feel like I've gone like a couple steps even deeper, you know, into the muck
Yeah.
than even that. I mean, um, you know, just um, looking at where we are collectively right now. And that is and like it almost feels like, you know, it feels like to me like there's this like threshold, and does it make even more sense to continue to put energy uh down down that path. I mean,
Right.
for the reasons which you're describing,
Mm-hmm.
like we're working within a system which is designed to keep this type of information not easily shared, let's say.
Yes.
And there's a contradiction. There's a guy who I follow on Instagram, and it's almost like it's a guilty pleasure of mine because he's really, really good at what he does. His Instagram account is Spirit World,
Oh.
and he's written a couple books, and he's very good at like what would you call that, etymology, like really breaking down words, let's
Oh
say,
yeah.
kind of in the tradition of Jordan Maxwell, how Jordan Maxwell does things.
Okay.
But he's taken it like, you know, he's the next generation of like all the people that were raised upon Jordan Maxwell. Then let me take that knowledge and then apply it one step further. So he does that, and he bitches it's the funniest thing because he yells at his audience. Like, if you're too stupid to understand this, well, then you deserve the hex of the, and I'm like, the only people who are reading this are the people who,
Who
you
get
know,
it?
laughing at that. But he shares all of his frustrations of how Amazon keeps his books reviews down low and all these sort of things. And he's
Oh
right
God.
about that in a
Yeah.
certain way. But I laugh to myself because I'm like, there's an internal paradox of what he's trying to do. The very system which he's trying to bring down, he's hoping that system will then support him,
Right.
right? And that's the truth of the world we live in. Like, I get it, but then at the same time, that creates an internal conflict, a cognitive dissonance, because you can't want to put all of your energy to destroy something, but then also say, but I also want it to give me the money which I need in order to live. And you're split inside, and I feel a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But then I also feel like uh, the I don't know if there's going to be a grand like to do when the next stage of control is upon us. You know, I don't know if they're going to send to Twitter and they're like, gotcha.
Yeah.
As much as it's going to be like what we've seen for the past 10 years,
Just this
which is
subtle like rolling out of,
right,
yeah,
right. And
the boiling
and I think
pot.
we've crossed that line.
Yeah, I know. I feel it too.
It's funny because I don't know if we talked about this last week. I mentioned Truth Stream Media.
I love them.
So their latest video that came out was on the China social credit system.
Okay, yeah. It's
and
fucking
that's something I've been following
evil.
for like at least 5 years. That's like
Right.
definitely in my hot butt, in my, the topics that I find personally interesting.
Right.
And so the one which they put out, there was a lot of new information. Like I'm pretty well familiar with the topic. And so for the last year or so, like, you haven't really seen anything new. It comes out of China, who speaks Mandarin, and,
Right.
it's already, uh, filtered anyway. But there was a lot of new information. And then what they did was they then compared it to where we are in North America and the Western world, and they kind of premise that what we're saying right now is like, it's more covert than overt, and it's more done by Silicon Valley as opposed to being done through the government, though arguably they're one and the same.
Right.
And so I'm watching that and I'm like, yeah, that really is true. And then I've been working at my friend Ben's Susquehanna Apothecary lately.
Cool.
And he mentioned how I think it was like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, PayPal stopped processing his orders.
I fucking hate PayPal. Right, they work fine for me, but just like the fear, because I'm like building sort of income through it, all comes through PayPal right now, and
Right.
there's not much of it, but hopefully it grows. And then if they ever decide to target me, it's like there's nothing you can do then. And
There's
there's a
nothing you can do.
couple other ways to accept money, but nothing as easy
We're in
that as many
so
people access.
so what's the difference between this and China?
Right,
The
right.
same friggin' thing.
Exactly.
Um, Ben's my friend who runs it. So he spent a considerable amount of time trying to get to the bottom of, like, what did I do? Why did you do this? And it's an apothecary, so he makes primarily herbal tinctures and mushroom tinctures, which he sells. And so he was probably like, he triggered something medicinally, like making
Yeah.
claims which can't be made. But he's pretty savvy with his language. He's very
Yeah.
aware of where that is. So he would not say in his descriptions anything which at least he would think would get triggered.
Right.
And I think the Etsy shop, which is where the majority of the sales come from, is like top 100 of all Etsy shops. Like, it's a legit shop.
Wow.
Um, and
That's what he did wrong, was he got too big. Like people
yeah,
started
and
noticing and
he can't get anything. He can't get any response from PayPal. He can't talk to a human being.
no.
And I'm like, where are we? What makes sense? And then also, like, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Like, and I want to, going back to like this idea of just even holding like Tataria as a concept, whether it's a factual story or not, I don't know, but holding it as like this concept of how we lived, or
Yeah.
how it's possible to live upon this earth, and particularly to be within body but not have these limitations of the system, needing money to pay for things, needing
Yeah.
food, needing shelter, all
Yeah.
of this sort of stuff. I'm like, do I want to continue to even put my energy into that inverse system?
Yeah.
What are the other options? And it's like, I've found myself really in this space in the past. It's been building towards that, but in the past week or so, like, it's gotten really intense. And so one of the ways it shows it is all of these projects which I've been working on, which kind of go back into that system. I'm like, do I want to continue to do that?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the whole thing, is like, does that paralyze my action because I'm not doing nothing?
Yeah.
Is that the possibility, or is this like, I've reached my line in the sand?
That's a hard thing to decide, like which one is it, because they're so
It really
similar.
is.
They're so easy to entangle, and like, yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, it's tough, and I think these are the sort of questions people are going to have to become forced to ask themselves, is like, where do you draw the line and what are you going to do? Because there isn't going to be a declaration. And I don't think for much longer you can do both things. Like, I don't think, and this kind of sucks to say, but it's like, I don't know if I can continue to like go down a path of integrity and then still use Zoom. Right? Like, do I really spend my effort, like, whether it's fruitful or not, of like trying to live or develop something which is the upside reflection of this inversion, or do I just continue to kind of, it seems like there's just enough, like there's always enough of a loophole to keep people still coming back.
Right.
Yeah, you can't do Patreon anymore, but now you got Subscribe Star. Like, you can't do PayPal, but now you can do this. And it's like, it's just enough. And the amount of friggin' work to do.
Yes. That's the thing too, is like, it's always changing. The goalposts are always changing, and like how you can access whatever is always changing. And so it's like a constant job just to keep up with, like what programs you use and where you disperse things and how often and like which methods and like which hardware and which software.
That's how the drift works. There's always moving the goalposts, and it's not that difficult that you can do it. Like, I mean, if it was very, very clear, then it'll be easy to say no. But like so many of us were pot committed. You know what I mean by pot committed? It's a poker term.
No.
It means that you've bet so much into the pot that you can't walk away.
You're just kind of stuck there.
You're kind of stuck. You're like, well, I've already put like $1,000 into this pot. The guy could be bluffing. What's another $100 to put in? And that's kind of like pot committed. We're all pot committed to like what we've learned and developed about the system. And it's like, when do we ever like, walk away from it? And it's an uncomfortable situation, because it's quite literally like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to be, do you want to be a bum? Is there something else? Like, I mean, this is where we get real metaphysical. Is there something else that we are literally unable to see because we're still 25%, 15% in connected into this system?
Yeah.
And I've been having like, and I've been internally playing with these sort of things, like, and I'll listen to podcasts, and I'm like, I want to be on this podcast. I'm like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
That's
or
why.
It's like kind of right. Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm completely right, but I'm like, I got more to say, and it's like, I want to add to this, and I can add to this, and there's other things which, and like, I get excited, and then I'm like, this is how I'm getting sucked back in.
Yeah.
But maybe I shouldn't. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. You don't have to know, though, because like, I think part of it is that it's good that we're even like asking these questions, right? And that we're even aware that there could be a line, or that might be now, or whatever, when might it be? And to think about it is all to like start to bring it into your consciousness and your reality. And that's good. And I think that, like, for me at least, these types of things tend to go like that, where I'm like starting to see something, I'm starting to think about it, I'm starting to question it, and then all of a sudden at some point it does. It's not like some external line in the sand was sort of drawn for me, but it's like some sign in my life, like whether it's physical or mental or emotional or all of the above. And then like some synchronicities from outside come together to where I'm like, okay, now it really is the time like to do this. And so like, I think that it's similar to me in this conversation that kind of always happens with people where they're like, well, why are you still on YouTube? YouTube is evil, and you're like supporting them and giving them energy for being there. And I'm like, yeah, but that's where I've like, despite all of that artificial suppression that we're talking about and censorship, I have the most chance of reaching someone. People are still there, still looking for some ideas, and even things where like you and I might think this is a really basic concept, like this was covered like decades ago, like someone might hear that and that might be like the thing that like clicks, and people will message me sometimes and say things like that, like, wow, I'm really glad that I heard this, and your guest was saying this and it like whatever, and this like changed the way I think about things. And it's like, cool, like that is the value in it, right? Is that any I think of it like this like lattice work that we're sending out, we're like building in the ether or whatever, and so any connection that we make with anyone is like valuable in that, because at some moment, sometime, and that net is going to be asked to like catch something, and if it's strong
Yeah.
enough it will, and if it's not it won't. And so I'm like, I'm personally still in the place where I'm like, I'm not going to remove myself from these, evil, like Facebook and YouTube, as evil as they are, because so far I still see progress being made, and something being produced that's of value. And so I'm still there, and it's still, but it's like you say, like I see that like I'm only there because they make it like just it's still frustrating and annoying and horrible, but it's just like not frustrating enough that I can keep doing it. And I recognize those things, and I think it's important too to be always moving towards, giving your energy as much as possible to things that are good, like shopping at places that actually have a conscience, and products that come from places that, are actually helping people instead of harming them as much as possible. And, like storing up your own ability to, whether it's like building a community, like literally where you're at, or like, planting some things that grow food, or encourage that sort of stuff. Like that's always important too. But yeah, I think like I've been really lucky because I had worked, my ass off in this stupid system long enough that I had this like chunk of money that I've been able to quit my career and like move and, redesign my life to be a lot less. I need a lot less money coming in order to sustain myself now than I ever have before. Not ever, but you know what I mean? For a long time since I left that. And so, but I would never be able to ask someone else. Like someone else the other day was like, oh, I'm thinking of van life, and like you are kind of doing that, and like, should I do it? And I was just like, I'm not going to tell you should. Like, I think it's an amazing opportunity I have, but like, I can't with any good conscience tell someone to do what I did and like quit your career and leave your house and like, get rid of your car and like do all this stuff. Cause I happen to have the right situation to support that. But not everyone does. And I guess I don't know where I'm going anymore with that line of thought, but I guess my point is that I think it's like highly, highly personal and specific, and that I think each person like will come to it in their perfect time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. How old are you again?
I was just trying to remember today. I'm 38.
You're
I'm
38.
38.
38. So I'm about 10 years older than you.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. You look like you're not. Nice
Um,
job.
yeah, and that's part of it too. I'm like, and I look at I with experience, like all you can do is really look at like how far you've come, like just like how many days you've woken up. Like, I don't have experience as someone 10 years older than me, but
Yeah.
I know what it was like when I was in my 30s. So what's cool about astrology is you can break it down into like major transits, like Saturn return, Uranus opposition, Chiron return, and that sort of
Is it
stuff.
my Chiron return in 3 years, you said, I think?
No, your Uranus opposition.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's a 42. So about 4 years.
Okay.
So and part of it, I'm wondering if it's that, and the eclipse that happened this past week,
Was
at
that
least
yesterday or
it was on
Friday?
Thursday,
Thursday? Wow.
Friday.
I have
Uh,
no sense of time.
that was like according to astrology theory, that one is going to be a huge one for me. That hit right on my ascendant, like where the eclipse was in the heavens at 21 degrees Cancer and 21 degrees Capricorn. So the sun and the moon are
Wow.
opposite.
Yeah.
So that's what I had. So my rising's 21 degrees Cancer.
Wow.
And so like when you have an eclipse which hits like right on like an ascendant or a sun, like that's usually like an indication of something really big personally. And so I'm like, maybe am I working
Maybe that's
through
it.
I don't know, but it's like it's there's part of me, like I was listening to what you're saying about like the lattice stuff, and I think one of the reasons why I like that spirit world guy I was talking about before, and what I said was the guilty pleasures, because maybe he's voicing some things I have not voiced myself, but I'm feeling similarly, which is like like no one cares. Like people who are interested, it's like, and maybe myself, I'm the same boat as everyone else, but it's like, all right, that was interesting. Now let me move on to the next interesting thing.
Yeah.
And it's no different than the latest Netflix show
Yeah.
of like whatever the conspiratorial research is.
Well, this is another thing I was thinking of, was like, it's almost like information overload or like fatigue or something, because like people will come to me and they'll be like, why aren't you like, on this, like make this petition or like write to your senators, or why aren't you trying to get people to act? And I'm like, I did that for like 10 years. Like I I'm over it. Like I can't
Yeah.
keep doing it, and like, and so then whenever people bring stuff like that up, I'm like, cool, do it, but like I'm not in it. Like I can't keep trying that angle when I did it for so long. And like I think there's like a lot of that. So if people are in like different like timelines sort of like how they're digesting all of this and how they're moving through it. And so like when people like come up and they're like really passionate about one of the things, and if you've already been there, you're kind of like, okay, cool, good for you. Like I'm not there anymore. And the same happens to me where I'm like, you guys, like this thing, it's like, oh my God. And people are like, yeah, I thought about that like 10 years ago. And you're like, okay. So I don't know how that might play into all of that either. Where like, because I think people do care pretty deeply, and I think, but it's like also this process of internalizing it is again like really personal, and then it takes like it's a process, like God, there's shit I'm still processing that happened to me like 30 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
you can't like instantly sort of get past it all or through it all or internalize it all or whatever it is that you need to do with it.
It's I mean, the way I see things now, and it's what's clear to me, and I said earlier, is like we can't continue to yell at the system and then want to stay in it.
Yes.
Right? It's the ridiculousness of like there's so many like the SJW sort of like there's this almost like ridiculous entitlement of like, I'm going to complain about like this horrible thing, but at the same time benefit from it.
Yes, or I'm
And
gonna say that, fuck the police, all police are evil, but also I want laws made that will allow me to use the police against people.
yes,
Like,
yes, exactly.
okay.
That sort of ridiculousness. And like going back to like if we're gonna look at it, it's like everything that's money is part of the system. I'm sorry. If you're gonna like total like free man, sovereign man type, but like metaphysical, like it's gotta like that's the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise, it's just like a big circle jerk. Like it's like we're talking about it, but it's the system. Like it has to be so fundamental. And like no one wants to hear that. And I don't have a solution for that. I don't have that knowledge or skills.
I've been
But
trying to solve that problem my whole life. Like I literally tried to exit the system and like start my own school where we would like pay and the guy was like, I'll pay you in like all these other ways except money. But when it came down to it, I was like, well, then I can't pay rent, and then I can't get gas. And like I have to get
exactly.
around and I have to live somewhere. So like how do you solve that problem? And then even if you're like, okay, let's get out and let's be off grid and let's have, this, it's like you still have to have money to get there, and you have to like go through the system to get that. And then like, even that is not really independent. And even if you can get there, awesome. But like not many people can get a lot of money to buy some land and start a farm and like grow food and have solar and all this
And
stuff.
it's still an island in the system.
Yes. And
Like
you're
it's
still enmeshed
still
in the
not
system.
like, I mean, that's like an individual solution to it.
Yes.
But it's like the things that interest me is like a larger scale, at least recognition that these are all the things that need to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's my hot button.
Yes.
And I can't expect anyone else to feel that way. And I certainly don't want to convince anyone to feel that way. And I just have this fatigue. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's uh it's that is what's paralyzed me. It's like, it's that's where the enthusiasm has disappeared.
You're at that like tail end of whatever it is, or you're like, yeah, I've been doing that for this many years, and now what? Like now
Yeah,
what?
it's and I'm kind of like, yeah, yeah. So it's and it's not fun to talk about because it sounds depressing.
Yeah.
But
It's it's just like a cycle. I had the same thought too a couple days ago where I was like, wow, people looking from the outside in, if they really saw like what I was going through right now, like might think I'm being depressed. They might be like, oh wow, you're depressed right now. But like in reality, it's like this cycle, of like, you're like a seed and then you're like budding and growing and then you're like shooting out and then you're like blooming and you're like, and then there's like a dwindling and a cutting back and like a death, and then like it happens all over again. And that stage, you can label it depression if you want, but like there's nothing wrong with it.
yeah.
you know
And maybe that's what I'm feeling like. I'm feeling like something's gotta like fundamentally shift. And it does look like we're at the time of a fundamental shift, outside of my own inner world, but the just everything right now with technology and everything right now with like potential wars and stuff, maybe who knows, but
it's really hard for me too, because I look at some people who are like really really awake at some point and really saw sort of the dangers in all of this, and those people now are like vaccinating their kids and putting them in front of a tablet for hours, and I'm like, I thought you understood, like and this is like a child, like it's a baby, and you're like, I don't know. And how did you get so disconnected? And I think that is part of the system too, is it's so alluring, it's so what's that, tempting. It's a temptation that's like always there to slide back into, because it's so much easier than thinking and acting and changing and like letting go of stuff and being more and more responsible for yourself. And that's all hard work.
it's
It's sad
the
to watch.
how technology changes, I think, is very interesting as well. There's once a time in my life I used to work a lot with spreadsheets, and I was good with spreadsheets. I understood how Excel worked, and like I could do all the fancy stuff.
Yeah.
And I took a period of time and didn't really use any spreadsheets. And now I'm doing some work with spreadsheets again. And I'm like, everything has changed.
Yes.
I don't know how to work anything. I don't even know how to describe what I used to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And the way they have it set up, it's so difficult to do, like, and
they call it user friendly, but it used to be a lot more. Yeah.
Everything has become worse. And my partner Jenny, she uses Apple Music. Do you know what Apple Music is?
I hate it. I hate iTunes. I hate Apple Music.
Yeah, I try not to use that.
Sorry.
She's the music person. So she was saying how she was going through all of her songs from like many, many years, and they changed the sorting in such a way. And
I hate them.
The way she described it, it almost sounded like an Instagram or Facebook feed, in the fact that there's no consistency.
Ugh. And it's like your music. You're like, that's my music. I bought it. I organized it. I like, this is mine. I have it in this way. What the fuck asked you to like change it all? Nothing did.
They're not. But if you think about these things, there's like just in the same way, like they all understood the importance of likes and how like that emotional manipulation has an effect.
Yes.
Well, apparently there's something they've all agreed upon, that there will be no consistency of remembering to go back. Like, oh, I know I can go back and find this again. Like that's no longer, like that has been taken off the table, and that's going to happen. You can't even
search for it using. Remember when you used to be able to use like advanced search methods, like Boolean search terms, or whatever? You can't even do that anymore. It's just like
all of that is being removed.
Yeah.
The other thing which we said, which was funny, Jenny was craving like sparkling water. So we went to like a convenience store for like, like they got like, I don't know, like
soda and crackers and stuff.
No, like what do you call it? Like Perrier or
yeah.
like
or like
sparkling, like just
yeah,
water with
with
carbonation in it.
bubbles, right?
Bubbles, exactly, just bubbly water. And that's kind of like, it's a popular thing right now. Like,
Yeah.
Deer Park's doing it now, and like everyone's into it. We went to 3 convenience stores, and different ones, like different brands, and none of them carried any sparkling water. Like there
What
was
the
this
hell?
uniform agreement that sparkling water will no longer be sold in stores. And like, again, I'm like, what is this world we're living in? Like, where these controls, there's nothing constant, whether
Yes.
it's like the iTunes, whether it's you can't search, you can't count on your sparkling water.
No.
But that definitely is taking away in these small, like little, like death by paper cuts, like a sense of stability.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Because
and
when I think back to the 80s, like that is the feeling I have is like stability. Like you had continuity and stability, and you had some level of being able to expect. Like I know you literally cannot ever expect anything in life, whatever, but like you had that, like some ability to know what you're going to expect, and it was probably going to happen that way. And
I mean, it sounds like you're pretty well versed about the significance of a developing human being, and like, during childhood and so forth. And when it comes right down to it, in order to form a strong the what a child needs to form a strong psychological slash emotional foundation for adulthood is one thing. It's fucking stability. It's
yeah,
stability in household. Like, that's what we
good
know. That's what
call.
everything says.
Good
I mean,
call.
that's not me. That's just like,
Yeah.
that's the teaching. It's like they need to have stability. You want to
Yeah.
give the one thing you would, even more so than maybe food, is give the child stability. Put your focus on, they go to the bed at the same time, they have the same routine, and this develops a stability, and that allows the child to like,
Yeah.
we need to be able to unfold. So if that's a truth, a universal truth for childhood,
And
doesn't
they
really
know
matter
that.
what that stability is, just as long as it's constant. We need something predictable. And we know also with lab rat testing that what makes lab rats lose their mind is the lack of consistency of reward systems. This removal
Oh,
of these small stabilities, like, it's got to have an effect.
yes. Well, so and I'm talking to James True tonight on the show. If you have, do you know James True?
I know a little bit about him. I think I
He's
might have heard
amazing.
one of his shows.
His
What is his, where is his real sweet spot of knowledge base or of
it's
insight?
it's this whole thing that we're kind of getting around actually is this like it's trauma programming and how it's happening on a massive scale, intentionally so, in order to make us these sort of dependent, incapable trauma victims or mind controlled basically because of it. And so, and he writes amazing, for me at least. Like he's up now in one of my top, I'd say 5 authors of all time, because he writes beautifully. He's very expressive and poignant and effective writer, and quickly too. It's like a lot of people can like go on and on like I can when I write, and sort of, he like gets to the point. So his books are pretty short and sweet, and they're amazing. And what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to read some of my like favorite quotes from each chapter, and he's going to expound upon them. But that, what you're saying, ties directly into this. Like if you're taking away stability, especially for kids growing up, but for all of us, this is now going to become part of the ongoing traumatization of us all, intentionally so. Because if we can never rely on anything, like this is part of PTSD that people don't understand often, is that you don't have to be in a war zone. You don't have to have a sudden acute trauma happen. What you can have instead is this ongoing lack of ability to know what's going to happen. This lack of stability can actually induce trauma, can make you have PTSD even. Just that. That's all you need, to have full blown flashback, like all of it, PTSD. And so that's, when you're bringing that up, that's what it's like bringing to mind for me, is that this is intentional and that it's meant to
Without a doubt.
traumatize us, to
Without a
keep us
doubt.
traumatized.
Without a doubt. I would
So
say ultimately that's where like part of like the sweet spot, which I think I bring to things, is like I'm really good at pointing out the specifics in real time. Like this is what the effect is
yeah,
on individual, and then mass, on the mass psyche, on the in that psychological world. Like, to go and see it like in real time and real stuff. And yeah, we're seeing that happen coupled with, yeah.
It's even like minor things. Like I bitch about this way too often, but like I go to the grocery store and like the things that I knew where they were are like not there. And I have to like wander around the store looking for them. And then it took like half an hour more than it needed to because I used to know I just needed to grab like oranges and turmeric or something, but now they're both in like some random spot and I can't find them. And then it took me that long and then I'm angry. I'm like, why the fuck did the oranges move? Like, why can't you just leave them where they were? You know, and it's just like this stupid minor detail that should have never been a problem. And instead, it's like ruined my consciousness. Well, I mean, I let it, but it's like, it's hard not
Yeah.
to. And like, literally every single aspect of life seems like that, where it's just built to like throw you off.
Is to throw, and this goes back to what we were saying before. Like at some point, you got to draw the line. Um, so I've been consuming more media lately than I normally do, like like pro TV shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it very much so because I like to decipher
Yeah.
and what I'm
You're
interested
analyzing it as you're watching it.
and I'm interested in watching things that have big followings because I know that these are the tools to have the greatest amount of effect on the greatest number of people.
You can tell what they're like getting people ready for by watching this.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Or like whatever it is, like I want to go watch it. So I watched the movie Joker,
Mm-hmm.
and
I
so
saw
this
it.
is what I was aware of. I'm aware that it was like the all-time highest grossing R-rated movie.
Wow. I didn't know
So
that.
it's huge in terms of the number of consciousnesses,
Yeah.
it got into. And I'm also acutely aware of coming into it, just the whole sort of contradiction of the same mainstream media, which talks about violence and gun violence and then glorifies it. So I came in with that, and I watched it right after I think it was like that the Iranian president was shot,
Oh, the general. Yeah.
the general, and
Soleimani.
it was, and there were, I saw like on one of the message boards I follow, like that's where I get a lot of the information, and had like some of the tweets from Trump, and I'm reading them, and I don't believe any of that stuff. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, this guy, whether I don't even know if he's human. Like that
Right.
could all just be digital because
Right.
that's all this stuff. Like I'm open to that as a possibility, but I'm very, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I'm reading his quotes, and I'm like, if I was a normal person, and if I were to read this from the president, and when you realize that every president has always been elected um, because he is the ultimate mass psychological father. That's why
Yeah.
the tallest president always wins the elections. And like, you go back and like they have the setup. So put the older George Bush against Bob Dole because Bob Dole looks feeble. He had
Yeah.
he had an arm deformity. And it's like, this stuff is really like, this is how it really works. It's like,
Yeah.
the president, we all know that politicians don't do anything.
Yeah.
Their skill set is the ability to be elected. That's their skill set. So it's the president always satisfies from the collective level the father figure, because the father figure tells the people like everything's going to be okay. This is what you need to do because this is what we want.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do. And particularly our the last 50, 100 years is they've destroyed the
Destroyed
family,
our fathers.
taken that away, which means the father figure becomes even more significant. We're all affected by that.
Yes.
So that, like, I just know that. Like, I've been studying this for a long time. And when I read these quotes from Trump, I'm like, these sound like the type of verbiage of a crazy man. Okay, like him saying like I don't have to tell Congress. It was two lines. It was a tweet, and it's like he said, "This is my official notice to Congress that we're doing action. I don't have to. I'm just telling you that I don't have to do this by law. I'm telling you this because I'm a good guy, and if Iran responds, we're going to come back disproportionately if we want to."
Wow.
And regardless of what the specific words are, what's important is the fact that it's unstable.
Yeah.
The father figure is telling everyone like he's acting like a nut.
He's off. Yeah, he's a loose cannon, literally.
This is happening at the same time, like literally at the same time in the collective consciousness that the movie The Joker is heralded, of where you actually see a crazy person, and and all of the feedback is this is the greatest movie ever made. And so what they're saying is this character is a good guy. This is a character you can sympathize with. This is a character which, like, you're going to become familiar with insanity.
Yeah.
And now I'm showing you I'm showing you this in action.
Yeah.
I'm showing you this in fiction, and now I'm showing you this in action. And it's happening with just a minor lag. We talked about this last week, about the difference between time and timing.
Yeah.
It's the timing of it. And you want a little bit of a lag, but you don't want it to happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
And you want it to be kind of like disconnected. But
Seemingly.
This is the trauma which is happening to the people.
Yeah, good call. I've never thought of the president as like a universal sort of father figure, but it definitely fits and makes sense.
You know, for whatever your country is, you know, there's always, like, the leader is always that.
Yeah.
To various levels of the hierarchy.
Yeah. Well, and then like people, I was weird too, because I kind of watch, you know, some Fox and some CNN and try to see like what, you know, the people who are still divided to the left and the right, like sort of think that the other side's doing or like whatever. And there's always this division. They're always fighting and they're like, you know, tit for tat. And it's like really ridiculous. But that happened, you know, the Soleimani thing or whatever. And suddenly both of them were on the same page. And they were both like, well, he was a bad guy and he deserved to die. And so, yep, we might, and who knows what's going to happen now. And there might be war. And, you know, very few of them were against that. And it was just weird to see this sudden like unification. And so that has to be part of it too, right? Where you're like,
yeah,
do a civil war. Wait, come together for this like common enemy. And then everyone wants unity and we want to come together. So that's got to be part of the psychology of it as well.
Well, that's Hegelian dialectic. That is, like, you know, that's the cool thing. Like when you study or you become aware of all of the different things, like you have, like, you know, everyone in the communities which we're in who study conspiracy and who how to study, you begin to realize that they're universal truths.
Yeah.
And there is a universal truth between this this tension and release. That's a Hegelian dialectic. It's the back and forth. It's the contractions of giving birth. You know, it's all of that. And so once you know that's a universal truth, you work it. If you're a controller.
Yeah.
Like, and you just, I mean, that's the whole thing with what's interesting, which we learned from like the Bernays Freud connection, is like Bernays says he just applies what Freud did to the individual man to the mass man. It's the same laws. And so when you begin to realize that, you can go and understand yourself, and you can understand like the people around you and be like, oh yeah, they know this, and this is how you would go, and you would take away the individual differences, but you boil it up to like a universal truth.
Well, this is why I'm so big on the opposite sort of dynamic where, you know, you work on yourself in order to affect the mass person, because I think it's the most effective sort of like magic or whatever, like power that we have in this world. And it's also literally the only thing we can control.
It's the only thing you can control.
And I think it's like very underrated. And I also think it gets a lot of lip service, but not a lot of like action, you know, where people are like, yeah, that sounds good. And then they don't actually like work on themselves. And I think, I mean, again, that's like really hard work. I think it's some of the hardest work that you can do. But I think it has the most effect possible. And, you know, there's this image that keeps coming into my mind while we're talking about all this, because it's the epitome of hell on earth, as far as I can understand it. And it's the prisoners that they have. They touch on it, and you see it from Guantanamo loosely, though they never really explain what it is. They touch on it in Men Who Stare at Goats. And it's this sort of sensory like overload intentionally, where they've got like this thing around your eyes and around your ears. They're blasting like pornography and like crazy music, and and it's very from like all accounts unstable. Like you can't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen next. And it might go into sort of like MK Ultra programming. It might have this sort of like time where you have like a released from it, but then it like right when you're like enjoying that the most, and they like come back in with the worst of it. And I think like, what if that was happening to me? And what would happen to my psychology and my heart? And I think, to this idea of like really, really practiced like monks or whatever, like I think that they could go into that and it wouldn't affect them. And I could be wrong, but I think that that's true. If they can take acid and it doesn't get them high because of their mind, I think that they could experience that and live through it and be whole still. And so I think like this is the other side. So like when you're working on yourself internally, you're able to affect the world around you and other people in the best possible way. But also you're able to then like withstand, and hopefully none of us ever have that contraption on our head. But you're able to then also get through something like that, which I think is really like the worst thing that can happen to a soul or a mind is that. I think it's evil, like, and I think it's the worst thing we've ever done. Besides like maybe in addition to, and I think they're connected at least to like MK Ultra sort of like torture and mind programming as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, MK Ultra is weaponized alchemy,
Yeah.
inner alchemy. It's understanding that when one goes through a certain type of experience, something else comes from it. And then it's just been refined and refined and refined and very, very specified in terms of like what it wants to do. If I can go and break you this and I could rebuild you that way, and then you'll be like whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
What you'd want to do when your scenario, which you just described, of the information overload. So what happens is you hit every sense, and you take it like, sight and smell and sound, and if you could get taste, and if you get feeling, like, and then the brain, like it then becomes numb because it's overload. Then you take that individual and then you put them in sensory deprivation, or you put them in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
So you go from this extreme to that extreme to this, but it's the same thing. They both are like a total blank.
Yeah.
And then that's how you crack it. That's how you break the strongest person. And that's the thing too. So I it's a real interesting point about the monks, and anyone who has ever had like a period in their life where they've done monk, they've really done their inner work, and they've strengthened their inner resolve. And then I say it's just fucking training.
Yes.
Because at some point, like, you can do that when you have that time. At some point, life is going to give you a scenario where it's going to see how far you can go.
Well, that's that like Lucifer concept where I'm like, I don't know if Lucifer is actually a being or if it's just this thing that comes in and it's like, oh, you think you're fucking like that? Well, here's this, prove it. And you either do or you don't. And that's not evil. That's just like, this chance to like see if you're there or not, to practice more really and like apply it.
That's just at least life on Earth.
Yeah.
I don't know about other life anywhere else, but
Right.
I know that seems to be what the thing is here. And that's Batman Begins. Batman Begins, one of my favorite movies. It's just the scene of like when he goes and he trains up in the high mountains. And then like all of that was just preparation. Like, so then you go out
for this next battle. Yeah.
But yeah, it's
But I think that ties back to what I was saying earlier, where like I kind of know in my life like what to do and what is right, because there's been a time of preparation. There's been like my mind has been like sort of gravitating towards it. My like emotions have been sort of like releasing from something else, and then there's like some synchros, and then it's like, oh, I was like perfectly prepared for this, and here it is in front of me, and so now it's what I'm gonna do or whatever. It's not to say that I'm always just like 100%. Here's the next thing. Like I do go through like internal struggle, like anyone would or whatever. Yeah. But that's sort of part of that process. I think is like you have been prepared at some level for whatever is going to come next or whatever you're supposed to do next.
Yeah. And I certainly feel like that's what I'm kind of going through right now. Is like this is the all of the stuff which I have prepared myself for has brought me to this.
Yes.
And I'm like, what the
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to, so, okay. So this is one of the things that I think about. So you look on like the Instagram or the Facebook, and you always see people put like these memes, about striving to be the best version of themselves, and like, the stuff about doing the work, and not and like the people who don't change.
Yes.
And I see that,
Like
and
almost
I
none of
think
them
a lot
have.
about it. And I'm like, well, what about this? What about accepting oneself as they are?
That's way harder.
I'm like, isn't that a value too? It's
Yeah.
like, at what point do you stop chasing a version of not who you are, but who you want to be?
Yeah.
How does that fit into that paradigm? And, I say that sometimes, like, kind of like snarky to myself. Like, there's this part of me that likes to fucking fight.
Yeah, me too.
Like online arguments. I'm really, really good.
Yeah.
I grew up in a household where like everything which you said was challenged.
Yes.
I was the youngest, and so you had to be able to really be sharp with your logic and your thinking. I just was raised in that environment, so like when I'm around like anything like this, like, all right, like anytime like a battle, particularly like of words, like where you could see it, like when I love that, but I don't do that anymore.
I was gonna say I've never seen you do that.
I used to.
Yeah.
A lot. Like 10 years ago, like when I was like pre 2012,
Yeah.
pre 2012. Like, I've been living this like practice of like what we're talking about for at least 10 years. Like, refusing vaccines and like questioning education and like all this sort of stuff. Like, maybe now it's like 10% of our country maybe sees it that way. Like, it used to be 1%. You were probably part of that 1% as well. But that's when I used to really like to fight.
Yeah. That's why I was always surprised when people recently have been like shocked by things I say. I'm like, have you not been paying attention to me for the last like few decades, or are you just like, this is shocking to you? Like, okay.
But it's well, going back, so I read these things, and I think it goes like to the point you're talking about is about the doing the inner work, and like maybe like the inside and the outside. It is this reflection. It is this cycle of like it goes round and round. I go and I strengthen this, and I go out in the world, and then it tests me, and then I come back, and now I look at it a little bit differently. And maybe that's what I'm doing right now, is like I'm looking at it. There was a time like, I was the biggest like inner work, inner growth, what have you. And now I'm like more so it's like, why don't I, I don't want to do any more inner work. I've done that. I've done the best I can do, and this is the best I got. And I'm like, there's some lines which I can't cross for better or worse.
Yeah.
And like, when do you go and you accept that?
Yes. Well, that is inner work too, because like exactly what you're saying, like all those people who are having those sort of memes and ideologies in their life, like most of them are not accepting themselves who they are. And I was gonna say, when you were saying that, like make the best version of yourself that you can, it's like based on which criteria. Like if I'm going by like society's like the best me, then I have to like go back to my job and buy a car and like get a house and, like sculpt my body or whatever, like, and all these things that I like don't value. So not that best version of me, like which best version of me. And I do think it's like you're saying, like you do need to accept yourself for who you are. And that's maybe all of the inner work is like peeling away the shit that got pasted on that like wasn't you ever.
And then you realize the core is like pretty fucked up.
Yeah. And then the core is fucked up and it needs a lot of help and a lot of like healing and whatever.
Well, it's funny because I really like to define words. I think we don't define words which we use, like common regular words, and so it's built upon assumptions, whether it's our own assumption for what they mean
and connotations.
or the other person thinks you mean something else.
Yes.
So I'm going to use I want to define the word complex. I was just thinking about that because I know that's a word I use a lot. It's complex. You're complex. The inner is complex. I'm like, well, what the hell does complex mean?
Yeah.
And it's like going to the inner work. Well, the complexity is the fact that I have conflicting feelings.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't complex, all my feelings would be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like it'd be like, this is what it is. Like I want to, like, there's part of me that feels this way that wants to do this, but then there's this other part that feels this way, and they're not in alignment.
Yes.
And like that's part of the is the acceptance. Like, that's what being complex means. It's like if I were easy, you would know exactly what it would be. And so it's like part of this and it's I feel like, and I want to loop this back to like why we're actually having this conversation as we're preparing for this event. Like this is kind of what I don't know what we're going to do at this event, but I think it has to do with this type of stuff. It's like a recognition of all of the information that's out there, a recognition of like there has to be a line to cross, a recognition of the inner work, a recognition of what does that mean, of like everyone. There is not a single person who is not a casualty of culture.
Yes. Absolutely.
Like, look around the room, the person to the left of you, right, and the person to the right of you, one of them is fucking nuts.
Yeah. Yes. And we're all in this process of healing and peeling that shit off of us.
Right. And it's like.
Well, and that's why I also like, I always want to emphasize this, and hopefully it can be emphasized in this event too, that there's no one there who is like the guru or like better than, or, we're all coming with different gifts and talents and knowledge sets. And, there's like speakers and there's like whatever. And there's people who have like certain roles, but like literally everyone can learn from everyone and everything. And that's not to like just give everyone like a participation award and say like everyone's perfect, but like that we all have something to offer and gather together to connect about is like part of the important part too, I think. That everyone coming is bringing something valuable.
I mean, one of the things which I'm certain you've experienced this as well, but one of the things which I've experienced having done quite a few podcasts and having people then reach out to me is something unusual happens when you are in front of an audience.
Yes.
And people think you're like an expert.
Yes.
Like, I'm very knowledgeable and I can speak about a lot of things very well, but there's a lot of fucked up shit. Every single person, like that's one of the reasons I like astrology so much, and why I think I'm good at it is because there's a real compassion towards like, I can see you're fucked up here, and this is where your fuck up is.
Yeah.
Like, I live that as well.
Yeah.
And it is difficult, and I found that to be very difficult of like being put up on a pedestal, being given an opportunity to speak, but then not thinking that not believing the bullshit about yourself, not thinking that you are
special.
Yeah, I mean, there are special people. It's like, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, it's the shit I bring is very, very special. The stuff you bring is very special. I've seen other researchers. I've seen very few that I think that are on my caliber in terms of creativity, imagination, and bringing together all sorts of stuff. Like,
yes. Eclecticness and
pat on the back. So like I got a very healthy understanding of what I'm good at.
Yes.
But then I also have a very healthy understanding of other shit. And that's also part of my frustration is like, you know what? My shit doesn't resonate with people to the way which I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Or at least in a way which would, I don't even know what it would be, but it's like, this is what this goes back to what we talked about before. Like, what do I want to continue to do? What was it? Why? What was it worth?
Yeah.
Your lattice talk was very inspirational. Like, oh yeah, it's for other fucks.
Yeah.
But,
Thank you. I feel like that like has to be kept in my mind. Otherwise, I have the same thing. I'm like, what the fuck is the point of this? I was just doing yesterday. I'm like, why the fuck did I write this book? Why am I writing this next book? Like, why am I doing this show? Like, really, what does like anybody fucking even care? And I know people do. It's not like I think no one cares. It's that like I'm like, really, what's it going to accomplish? What's the goal or like whatever? And then I just always have to like step back and remember like I enjoy it and other people to find value in it. And there's some connections being made that I'm never going to understand. And it was the same as when I was a teacher, you know, I was like, that I understood it better then though, that like the real reason I was there was to connect with these young people and to give them, you know, as much as I could to like help them grow their soul, basically, you know, and their mind, in hopes that someday they exit the system or at least like ask more questions about it or whatever. And that was my whole goal, is just to be like one person that loved them and one person that might like encourage them to think towards those directions. And I have to go back to that. Like if I'm enjoying it and I love it and it's like connecting anybody with anything, then like that is the value, and I can't know where that goes and how it kind of unrolls in the world and what it accomplishes. And so I had to, you know, once again and come back to that, because there is a point, there is a purpose, and I know that in my soul. Like I know I was like literally led to this, you know, and it was like thrust on me. Like here I am doing it like the best I can and feel like I'm like a midwife for whatever it is, you know. And that's an honor or whatever. And I do think that we're both experts on something, you know. You're definitely an expert on the Susquehanna alchemy and the mystery that of that, as well as other things that connect with that, and astrology, obviously. And I'm an expert in education, but I was still flabbergasted when adults would come to me and ask me like how to parent their children. I was like, why the fuck would you ask me? Like, that's your kid. Like, clearly it's going to be this like very individual answer that like I don't have, because I don't know either of you very well, and I'm just like a lady, I'm just like a teacher, you know. But I have to remember, because it's the same when people come to me now, sort of as like, oh, you have this show and like you do these things, and like, will you, you know, tell me, what do you think about this? And I want to, like, my instinct is to be like, why would you even ask me? Like, go ask someone else who's like way better than me or something, you know? But I have to go back to like, they're asking me because they genuinely want to know my opinion. It doesn't mean that like what I tell them is the absolute truth, definitely. And I hope they know that too. But like, I think I almost like kind of owe that opinion, right? So I'm like, okay, well then I'll tell you this. Like, here's my best assessment and guess. And the caveat is I'm not sure. So the end. Like, and that's the best I got. But I think that also has a value and a place. And I think that's like part of, I guess, accepting whatever role you want to call these types of things that we do.
yeah. Yeah.
But I think that there's a value to it that we'll never even possibly know. And it often doesn't look the way that we thought it would. And I just have been meditating on that recently too. Like, you're going to get everything you need, and you're probably going to get everything you ask for, and it's probably almost never going to look how you thought it would look. Sorry.
No problem. Actually, I'm going to go step into, we'll go wrap this up in another room. Hello,
all right.
lady.
Hi, lady.
Yeah. Yes. Jenny, Lindsay.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So I probably should be wrapping up and go
Yes.
Greet all the people who just came in.
I like that we didn't like ever actually get to planning anything or whatever, but it was an awesome talk.
well, that's what I was saying. Like, I think this is part of it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is understanding like what what we're trying to accomplish. Like,
Yes.
what is the mood? What's going to happen? Like, I mean, and that's my sense.
Yes.
One last thing. So I want you to look at. I want you to look at the book the guidebook which I sent you, The Rights of the 40th Parallel.
Yes.
And based upon everything which we're talking about, it's going to make a little bit more sense, because it was written as a model of how you can take the human experience and inner work, and then tying that into the natural environment.
Awesome.
And so specifically, following the what I call in the book the goddess model. That's what the ancients called it. Everything is born, everything lives, and everything dies, and that just goes on and on and on. And so,
yeah.
I'm not saying maybe I'll do a talk about that specifically within our time this summer, but my sense is like, and I don't know, you're the one who's creating this event, like it's going to be deep and practical, and it's going to be like about the inner experience, but then also like all the different things. I think it has to include it all.
Absolutely. You just like said it better than I could. That's exactly what my vision for it is, that it's going to be like egalitarian and very personal, very interpersonal, and like a celebration of togetherness, but also with this like internalizing of whatever growth and sort of alchemy we can accomplish. I think like at one point someone said, I think I figured out like why you were able to like make this group of people and do this thing. And I think you're like really good at group alchemy. And I'm like, man, I don't even know what that means, but I like it. I'm happy to shepherd that as much as possible. So that's sort of my feeling about it. But yeah, we'll definitely talk again next Sunday and get back into it. So,
I still think this was part of it, but yes.
Yes, I do too. I think it's absolutely an awesome conversation and definitely part of the process. So, yeah, thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Have a great week, Lindsay.
All right, you too. Bye, Mike.
Do your homework, make your dome hurt. While up on earth, my bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak, while the tongue feeds a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies, disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the God gets food is sorcery. To recreate the God forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Penio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me? Go.
Sculpted from the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional three ain't meeting me on top of the fourth. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with Yggdrasil, branch down, try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter that they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the back to the savage. Them clasped hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. With nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking run.